Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to my impressions of Bubsy. Say it with me now. The Woolies strike back. Oh joy. So, Bubsy was originally a franchise of platforming games. Even went to 3D at one point in the 90s, and it was pushed by Accolade, the same publisher behind this game, and it was an attempt to compete with Sonic and Mario as a platforming mascot, and you can probably tell how well that turned out. It was a complete flop, despite putting tons of money in marketing, because of course, you know, marketing sells games, not actually good games. So anyway, I think there was like a pilot, there was like 4 or 5 games based off Bubsy, and it just didn't do well. And I can tell you why. The games just weren't designed very well. They were pretty terrible, to be honest. And they're just better options on the market, kind of like right now with this one. Now, I can say that this game is marginally better than the originals, but it's still awful, and that's not even the worst thing about this game. But more on that later. Alright, so options. You have a good amount of audio options over here. I'm going to turn this down a bit because there's voice acting in this game for Bubsy, and it's terrible. It's like they told the voice actor, hey, we need you to be as annoying and obnoxious as possible, and also, we're only going to give you like 10 lines to repeat over and over again. At least the game is very, very short. In fact, it's actually criminally short. I don't know how I feel about that, actually. Like, I feel like, oh, wow, this is a real ripoff. It's barely 2 hours long. But then again, I didn't have to play it for more than 2 hours, so that's nice. There's more options in the launcher window. You can actually rebind your controls, your keys, your resolution. You can't rebind your resolution, change your resolution, and your graphics options. So that's at least nice. The game runs very well, and it actually looks kind of pretty. But that's where all of my compliments end. So, as I said, the game is less than 2 hours. You basically have this entire screen. That's 11 2D platforming levels and 3 boss levels. This game costs $30. It was released on October 31st. It flew under the radar for good reason. And now, only 5 days later, November 5th, this game is now like 20 bucks on Steam. I find it really insulting, though, that they actually have a collector's edition for the PlayStation version. If you can believe that. Comes with a soundtrack and everything, which actually isn't too bad. But in like the month or the year that you have A Hat in Time, Cuphead, and Sonic Mania, you release this game that not only costs more or the same as those games, but is not nearly as replayable, not nearly as fun, and doesn't have nearly as much content. Alright. I'm just delaying the inevitable. Let's get into this. So, at a first glance, you might notice, like, hey, it actually doesn't look too bad, and that's true. It actually looks kind of fun. It's very colorful, very bright. There's some nice music. The controls are actually not too bad. What's really wrong with this game? I mean, aside from it being criminally overpriced. Well, the problem comes in the challenge. Now, unless you're playing a game designed to just have you very much relaxed, and even then, I at least associate some challenge with relaxation. You know, not too much, but, you know, just enough to keep you on your toes and engaged. The problem is Bubsy is a very frustrating platform series because they kept this one design philosophy, even in this game, which was one-hit deaths, which is a terrible idea for a game like this when you have to collect items, when you have to backtrack, when you have to play the levels longer than 2 minutes. Super Meat Boy is an example of a game that does one-hit deaths correctly. You know, when you die, you respawn incredibly fast. It's very snappy. The controls are razor tight. Tight. I don't know if you can call it razor tight. That sounds painful. Anyway, I think I was going for razor sharp there. Excuse me. Anyway, so the levels in that game are, you know, again, short, and it's very engaging. But most importantly, the levels are short, and here they're a little bit longer. And to make up for this, for not having to restart the entire level, you have these little exclamation points. These are your checkpoints. And you also have these little shirts that you can collect. And they add to, like, your overall score, I believe, or just something in the overworld. I have no idea. I don't know what collecting all these yarn do. I have no idea what completing it under a certain time limit does. it's just there for the sake of being there, probably to pad out the game. Joke's on them, I'm not going to do any of that. So, the problem with Bubsy is that when you die, you're just going back to a checkpoint that's like 20 steps away. There's not a whole lot of point to just have, you know, one-hit deaths when you just simply start back, you know, a couple paces back. Because at that point, you're really just challenging your patience rather than your skill. And I understand if they remove those checkpoints, the game would actually be very, very, very frustrating. But it's either you get something that's very easy or very frustrating. You can't really have something that provides, you know, a reasonable challenge, something that'll make you feel fulfilled. It's just, oh, well, that was kind of cool, I guess. I beat the level. Now, why they do one-hit deaths platforming in a game like this? Well, I guess because the original had it. Why is Bubsy talking and being incredibly annoying? Well, because the original game had that. The game is solely pushing on just brand appeal, which is hilarious considering, once again, it's Bubsy. No one's really heard of this franchise unless you watch a lot of YouTube. The platforming is pretty uninspired. The level, as is the level designs, they really don't have any cohesiveness to them. Later levels just feel like they just plastered a bunch of platforms everywhere. It's like a really amateur Mario Maker level. Like you gave a 10-year-old a copy of Mario Maker and told them, hey, make a level in like an hour. And that's what you got. This level is not too bad, if not just uneventful. The later ones, it just feels like they scattered hazards and just crap everywhere. I don't say this much, but I bet I could design a better level. Not a game, but if you gave me all the tools and let me just place them all around, I probably could design something as good as, if not better than this, in about the same amount of time. It feels like this game is really, really rushed, which is weird considering that, once again, like, why? This is just... It was pushed on a meme, and it's not like the meme's brand new. John covered the series in 2012. That was 5 years ago. I think only recently did it really start to catch on. I think, like, AVGN did a review of it, like, a year or two ago, and then some other smaller channels started doing, like, oh, hey, you know, fun fact about this viral video series from HVGN, you know, it's caught the world by storm. You know, Bubsy turned out to be, just never existed in the first place. Did you know? Ugh. It's just, why? Why cover a game like this? Cover something interesting. Of course, it's popular, but not because the games are good, because they're bad, because they're infamous. And they decided, hey, let's just make a game without any proper direction, just have it be like the originals. You know, it'll be a fun, frustrating platforming game, except it's not. It's just frustrating and sometimes easy and then mostly boring. At least the original game had a lot of annoying, frustrating moments where, you know, by the time you beat it, you're like, okay, that was terrible and just an awful experience, but hey, I beat a very difficult platforming game that a lot of people meme around about. This game just doesn't even have that. Alright, I'll show you a boss fight, and this is probably one of the weakest parts of the game. It should be the most fun, but it was honestly some of the most frustrating moments I've ever had in a game in 2017. At least one I covered on the channel. So, the problem with these bosses is they don't telegraph their attacks very well. And it just turns into a frustrating mess. The hit detection can be off at times. In the regular 2D platforming parts, it's not too bad, but in the bosses, during the boss fights, the hit detection can just be very aggravating. And also, I'm not sure if you're hearing this, but there's a stock sound effect. Like a punching stock sound effect with these... Like, I'll just jump on this guy and... It sounds like a really generic bar fight punch. Or like a slapstick... Just very stock, which is really off-putting for a $30 game. There are games that are fairly expensive for like 20 bucks that are actually fairly enjoyable to play. You know, they might not have like 8 hours of content, but some of them are really, really good. I think Bastion launched at like $15, and it was like 3, maybe 4 hours at best, and it was one of my favorite games that came out that year. I think 2012 or 2013? 2012 or 2011, I'm not sure. But it was a really great game, and you know, people didn't mind that it cost that much. But here you have something that costs so much, and yet offers so little. These bosses are just padded out so hard because their animations and their like time between attacks lasts forever. Like, look at this, look at this. It's just, are you done? And 2 minutes might not seem like too long, but when you consider that most of that time is just spent doing nothing, it's just, like, look at this. A lot of it's RNG. They kind of just randomly chooses his attack patterns. Ugh. And there are some bosses where sometimes he'll throw a certain pattern of attacks at you that are almost unavoidable. That's one of them later on, and I could tell that he's the final boss because there was a crown on his head, because all these bosses look exactly the same. They have the same playout, you know, jump on the enemies that they spawn. They're basically saucers. They have weird hitboxes. You can't jump on them. You have to use like a jump and pounce ability, which is kind of inconsistent. I'm sorry, that's about it. That's all I got. Bubsy. The Woolies Strike Back. Don't buy this game, please. Don't support it. It's... I mean, at least with other games, I can at least say, like, okay, they're gonna get updated and fixed and more content will be added. There's not even a good baseline for something good here. Like, I feel like this was an attempt at making something that was going to be good, and then, like, they were like, okay, we're gonna rewrite some of the levels, and we're gonna kind of do this from scratch, and then we'll release this as, like, a press demo or something, and then, you know, corporate accolade comes in and says, nope, this is good enough, release it. It's like, there's only like 2 hours of content. Release it, but it's $30. You're asking for $30. Release it, but there's like 3 other games that are like way better that came out. Release it! It's not fun, it's not challenging, it's just either super easy or overly frustrating. And there are a lot of games that could be, you know, either one of those things, but at least they're consistent. Like, Kirby's a good example. Kirby's a game that's very, very easy, generally speaking, but there's always, like, some fun gimmick. You know, like, co-op makes it fun with more people. You know, the copy ability is really enjoyable. The controls in that game are smooth. And usually there's also, like, an incentive to do something else that ups up the challenge. Like, here, there's just a bunch of crap scattered everywhere that you're supposed to collect. Not really intuitive, no reward, kind of boring. Kirby's like, okay, there's actually extra levels in this game, and if you collect some of the stuff, you'll unlock that, and when you actually try to collect that stuff, the game actually ramps up in challenge, but it's totally optional. So you have an easy game, but you can, at any time, try to make it more difficult by doing all this extra stuff. Here, it's, you know, a little bit more difficult, but it's boring. There's no reward, there's just the satisfaction of beating a Bubsy level. And that's never been satisfying. Wasn't satisfying over 20 years ago. It's not satisfying now. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. I'm out. Oh.